I just saw the movie Conclave with Ralph Fiennes. It's basically, the gist of the movie is about them, the Pope dies, and it's about them electing a new Pope. And you'll get that from the trailer, and you get the gist from the movie poster, so I don't think that's a spoiler. Unless you're one of those people that likes to go in completely blind, but if you did, I doubt you'd be listening to this podcast. So this movie kind of flipped things on its head for me, but in a really good way. I actually, in the beginning, I remember having thoughts of like, this is kind of slow. This is kind of boring. It's definitely a slow burn. It's a slow burn and a very gradual build of tension. And as I shared with you, they're literally voting for a new pope. So it's just lots of conversations, lots of walking in the hallways, lots of voting, and then building the tension of the voting, which, you know, depending on the types of movies you see, you could have the assessment of like, not a lot's happening, right? But if you get the stakes of what they're voting for and the impact on the church and the impact on the entire world, it's a really big deal. So yeah, just heads up, it's a slow burn. The acting is extraordinary. I mean, Ralph Fiennes is just amazing. Stanley Tucci, John Lithgow, always. And I really enjoyed the cinematography as well. There was just a lot of really great shots and really interesting framing and like symbolic shots and like the kind of color contrast of these like religious uniforms and outfits with like white or gray and different things like that. I also felt, I mean, it's literally Thursday, November 7th, which is 2 days after the election, really one day, because, you know, I found out Wednesday morning. So, you know, it is very poetic that it was all about like an election and politics and all of that. So I found that very interesting and maybe done purposefully, that I was watching that movie and that art was reflecting life in that regard. And so anyways, so a little bit of a spoiler alert. Like, I don't actually think this is like a true spoiler alert. It's more so generally speaking about it, but you should probably stop listening if you don't want any sort of possible, you know, thing about the plot. I'm going to speak very vaguely about it, but it kind of speaks to the more overall context for me, the more overall context of the election and the current political landscape of the world right now. It's like, you know, the gist was, and I think they even show this in the trailer, there's this one particular leader or person that's vying for the position as Pope. And they very much are old school and very conservative and very divisive, and they want to kind of take the church back to the good old days and like speaking Latin, and they have like a point of view that's kind of prejudiced against like different races and different like languages, and like having compassion for other religions and like things like that. So and then there are definitely a lot of characters that are vying for power and trying to hide things from their past that are to be revealed about certain things. But there was just like this moment where this one character that is of the more liberal, progressive nature was, you know, speaking in response to the more old school cardinal. And I just kept thinking about like power, like the themes in this movie of power and the fear mongering of like one leader, and just how fear mongering is used so often to lead. And when this particular character was talking about, there's like a moment where they talked about like the acceptance and the love for one another and each person. And of course it made me just think about the current landscape. I think it's really, and there's lots of people that would probably cancel me for saying this. I think it's really easy for people to be very divisive and have a point of view about someone who voted for Trump or Republicans or conservatives specifically. Just as easy as it is for that side to have their point of view about liberals and progressives and Democrats. And for both sides and many different sides to hate and despise each other and to be disgusted with each other. But it's like, but love is actually the only thing that combats hate. When you're hating hate, it's actually just more hate. And I got really connected when I was watching this film to that concept. Not even concept, but like to that idea. Because I've just been seeing a lot of things on social media lately. And of course, everyone is entitled to their opinion. Everyone is entitled to feel the different emotions that they are experiencing. But it's just more of it. Like the very hate that, like, seemingly, for instance, liberals or progressives hating conservatives or hating Republicans and saying that Republicans are, their entire campaign is mounted on hate. And they hate them. It's just as bad and just more of the same thing as Republicans hating liberals and being disgusted with liberals. And like, nobody talks about that enough. Nobody talks about that. I think there's a way to get to a point in this country where we can discuss our views from a safe space, to discuss and disagree on things together collectively and not have it be so us versus them, win, lose, like this kind of like power grab. And it's just so humanity, and I see it on all sides, and everybody's being righteous and everybody's being hateful, and nobody is listening to each other, and nobody is really respecting each other. And it's not that we're not allowed to feel emotions and be angry and all of that, but who are we going to be in the face of something that we say is hateful? Are we just going to be hateful? Because that's hypocritical BS. So anyway, I'm just going to get off my little soapbox for a minute, because I really think that's the next transformation that needs to happen in this nation, in the world. Like, for us to actually be able to understand why people feel the way that they feel is the only way that we can transform it and have there be harmony and workability. And that's what I'm interested in. So, spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert. I hope you stick around and hang in there for this kind of slower movie, because I did not see this coming. And I feel like I see like everything coming. Like, I've just seen a lot of movies, and it's just so easy sometimes to be like, tap into the tropes and the cliches and be like, I bet that person's the father. I bet they're going to get together. And then it happens and I'm like, oh, I'm so not surprised. So the ending, the character that I shared, he's actually this cardinal that was like kept in secret and was basically became a cardinal at the beginning of the movie and introduced. And they, kind of sprinkled this person throughout the film, where you really got that he believed in the Ralph Fiennes character, and he was just very accepting and loving and nurturing and very open-minded and progressive. And at the end, when I thought that they were going to choose Ralph Fiennes' character to be Pope, this was the gentleman that won it. And then this thing comes out that Ralph Fiennes goes to confront him about in the room. And it turns out that this character is actually intersex. And that, he has, a penis and male parts. And then later in life discovered that he had a uterus and ovaries as well. And it catches you so off guard, but like what's so cool about it is like the character talks about this speech that Ralph Fiennes makes in the beginning of the film about how doubt cannot exist without faith. That the very notion of having faith is because doubt exists. They actually have to coexist at the same time, which is so mind-boggling to people, which is such a gray area, which is people can't fathom that because everyone wants to fit everybody into a little box of black and white, right and wrong, which is the very thing that I was speaking to earlier. But it's like, what if there was no right and wrong? What if there really was just, this is my belief and this is your belief, and maybe we could talk about it together and get to some sort of gray area and get to some sort of compromise. And this character speaking to that they could actually, because they've lived their whole life in kind of the in-betweens. And it was just so, so great. And I also loved that it didn't feel, sometimes I'll see things and something feels a little shoehorned in, or it feels a little cheesy or soapboxy. Like you can almost tell the filmmaker went in and was like, well, I'm going to have this character be like this because then it's going to make a statement about gender orientation or the LGBTQ community, where it's going to represent, like, it's almost like you can tell there's like a little bit of this like inauthentic vagenda. That's a mix of agenda and vagina. That's what they should start calling it when women have any sort of plan. I got my vagenda. Anyway, you can tell a little bit when it's inauthentic, but this didn't feel that way at all. It just felt so like, oh my gosh. Like it was just really, I feel like the entire film is worth it for that ending. Like it just knocked me back.